The whole idea of geographical or geological history, as much as indigenous history of colonial settlement, of agricultural practice, of the age and oldness of the dirt that we all walk on. These seem to me to be the big subjects, those subjects, specifically to the Wimmera district, in front of us all, they're things that we all know about. We have a sense of these things as being part of our lives. And what I think is really important about what Ewen does is reminiscent of a quotation I once read of Borges, the great Argentinian poet and critic. And he was asked to describe what he thought defined the concept of poetry. And he said that poetry is the thing that gives form to all of those things that we know and understand but always remain at the periphery of our sight. And I think what Ewen does tells us about what it's like to be living here. And not just here in Horsham, but I guess for anyone that lives in a non-metropolitan part of this continent, these works have resonance, whether they're about the engraving of a seed drill or a plough, or whether they're about the undulations of the earth as the Wimmera becomes defined from an inland sea, and that sea drains off back into what's the Murray-Darling Basin now, and it leaves its system of sumps that all point north, northwest, south, southeast, and you've got these kidney-shaped retainers, receptacles that when it's wet they're full, and as we know all too well, when it's not wet they're just dry. They're not good for much. I particularly like the layers of meaning that we can glean out of these works of Ewen's. They remind me in some part, I was telling him today, there's a great Australian photographer called Baldwin Spencer, who was one of the founders of the VFL. He helped establish the State Library. He taught at Melbourne University, and he undertook two major expeditions across from Melbourne into Central Australia and up into Queensland. And there are some great photographs of ceremonial scarring of various tribespeople that he'd met. And in one way, these works can be seen as something akin to that idea of a ceremonial cut and a filling, and it becoming equivalent to not just a passage into adulthood, but an image of the land itself. There are obviously all sorts of equations with the way in which Ewen goes about making these works that are akin to both sculpture and printmaking. And I'd really like to see what these things look like as prints. I'm sure you've probably at times printed them off. And so the way in which they can be read is sort of, in a way, universal. They're both long-distance aerial images of what the dirt looks like, or they're as intimate as the fingerprint on our hand. And in these works, they're not just Ewen's way of finding out about how he relates to this place, what it means to him and how he can be in it. But in a way, what he allows us to share is how we fit in this place, what it means to us and how we fit into it. So I think on those very terms, congratulations, Ewen, and the exhibition is now over.
Yep.